That reminded me, Stefan, of what I used to tell my middle schoolers, and that was I would tell them, I was like, I'm a benevolent dictator. Like we're gonna do it my way, but I will hear your complaints and smile about them.
But ultimately, when it comes down to the Browns organization, I'm the ones making the decision.
Yes,
Exactly. Yeah.
Welcome to Learning Out Loud, where we get curious about all things teaching and learning. I'm Stefan, a regional technology coach, here with Andy, a regional math coordinator, and Cari, a regional science coordinator. We're just three educators on a mission to dig into what works, what doesn't, and what we're still figuring out. This podcast is for teachers, coaches, and leaders who want to grow in their professional practice. We don't have all the answers, but we're asking the questions and recording the process. Let's go to work.
Okay. Well, so we're going to talk about chapter 12, freedom within form. And I think one of the things that struck me about this chapter was just the connection to stuff that we've already talked about, that stuff that has already come up in other chapters and other just discussions as we've been thinking about and talking about teaching and teaching instruction and what we see in classrooms that looks really good. But so in this chapter, he starts with the paradox of freedom. And I could totally relate to this conversation just outside of teaching, but to this idea that too little freedom feels oppressive, while too much freedom can be overwhelming. And now you guys, if we go back to our business chemistry,
oh yes,
as pioneers, maybe too much freedom is not overwhelming to you. But to me, when I'm given like the sky's the limit, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. Like I need some bumpers. Like I need some guardrails that are gonna like at least get me in the right direction, because sometimes that's too much. So that's how the chapter starts, is just this idea that, students need to have some choice and they need to have some autonomy in order to get the most out of their learning. But it can't just be a free for all. One, as a teacher, you'll just be exhausted, I imagine, if your classroom is a free for all every day. But if it's a free for all, there could just be this loss in learning. It's not productive learning if students get to just bounce around and just willy-nilly do whatever it is. He also talks about, and this has come up several times, but he's talked about that banking education. So in our previous chapter, Andy, you talked about this a lot, where we view students as these little receptacles that just need to receive the information, and it's our job as educators to fill them up. I use the baby bird analogy. They're just little baby birds sitting at their desks with their mouths wide open, and it's our job as the parent bird to just stuff the food down inside their mouths. And so Knight calls it banking education. I've also heard it referred to as transmission education, where it's I, the educator, hold all the knowledge, and you guys are just to receive the information. Yeah. And it can only come from me, not from a learning community. So as we think about this part of the book, this part 3, community building, it's like community building really is in opposition to that idea that we're banking education in our classrooms. So anyway, I just really appreciated that paradox of freedom, and thinking about too little freedom, students aren't learning. Too much freedom, students aren't learning. And I shouldn't say aren't, but are less likely to in both
a smaller percentage of your students are learning, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because absolutely some kids thrive in the very highly structured, write these down in your notes, memorize these, here we go by Friday. And then some students really thrive in the go find something to learn about, go learn about the thing. So we've kind of seen, and I imagine that it's much more structured than what I have seen in a classroom, but are y'all familiar with Genius Hour?
Mm-hmm.
And schools that are implementing Genius Hour, where it's this hour of time where students get to choose a topic of their choice and get to do some learning on their own. And the one time that I've been in a classroom where I've seen it, it did feel like a free for all. And like kids were just doing whatever they had topics, at least like there was that structure going on. But some kids I noticed didn't know what to do. Like they had chosen a topic, but then they were just like, I don't know, I've just been sitting here on my computer Googling it or whatever. So,
Well, that came from Google, right? the
Hmm.
Genius Hour, which, like, if you think of that work environment, you've got these really dedicated like adults who have worked hard to get there, and so like they're able to give that freedom with less structure because you've got like your culture is much different at an institution like that where uh it's like you could be fired. You're not firing a kid from a classroom, and that's what always worries me about those Genius Hour pieces is we have a tendency to be like, well, we just need to let kids cook. We just need to let them go. And analysis paralysis is a very real thing, right? Like you've got way too many choices. I saw this mentioned in the last episode we recorded about the blended self-paced learning. One of the early failures that I ran into in that classroom was technically kids had infinite amount of things in front of them they could do, and so it's like there's no need for you to slow down. I'm the only one in your way, right? Like, cause I had like, I'll gatekeep your learning, and that actually led to less productivity because there were just too many things for them to do. And that's where like, just on my own professional development journey, that's where I started to see the value of, I guess I wouldn't have been able to put a name to it, but freedom within form. Like I did not have nearly enough form to provide that structure for students to be creative and have freedom within. It also makes me think of a teacher that I was working with during COVID, and she was telling a story about how she was like clearing out her grandfather's garage, and they were trying to get rid of some stuff, and they had a whole bunch of stuff on the side of their curb, and said everything is free, and like very few things were ever taken, and so just a sign that said free, And then they changed it to everything $1, and then stuff started to go. People just needed to know what was expected of them. Like, is
Hmm.
this really free? It feels like a trick. But the second like something was required from them for whatever reason, and so very, very minimal, but they felt better handing over $1 than just taking some stuff for free.
Yeah. Well, and Stefan, so you're talking exactly what this chapter is about. It's about that balance of providing choice and having the choice woven into the fabric of your lessons while also having those guardrails set, like some structures in place. And so, like he talks in the chapter about procedures and rituals. Like freedom's not possible until you have some procedures, and the procedures need to be very clear. They need to be explained. They need to be modeled. They need to be practiced. And I think we've probably all seen classrooms where we see procedures like bell ringers, right? Like warm ups in the classroom or exit tickets, like things that students are having to do while the teacher takes roles. He talks about timers, like having timers in place, like you have this much time to do these things, but you have a choice in whatever order you want to do those things. But here's the guardrail. You've got 15 minutes, and at the end of those 15 minutes, here's the 4 things that you need to have accomplished or something, like just setting those places, those form in place, right? So that students can have some freedom and some choice within those boundaries. Um, he also talked about dialogue structures, and we've talked about dialogue quite a bit in some of our previous chapters, especially in the previous section of the book. The dialogue structures made me think about the thinking prompts,
Hmm.
where we talked about discussion. And one of the quotes and I want to read the quote because I really liked it, is if the structure does not permit dialogue, the structure must be changed. And this is something that I hear pushback on from educators quite frequently is we don't have time. Like there's not enough time in a 45-minute class period in a 90-minute chunk of uh, allotted time in my day for students to do a lot of talk, like and discuss. And I think the three of us and many, many, many people all agree that it's in the talking is where the learning is happening. Like the people doing the talking are the people doing the learning. I've heard that lots of times in our circles. And so I just really appreciated that quote and how much time he spends in the chapter around dialogue and how important it is for students to get to talk about and have choice within dialogue and dialogue structures. So he gives some examples in there around like brainstorming, doing affinity diagrams. It made me think of hexagonal thinking. I think we've done that activity. We've done it in a district. I don't know if you were up there with me, but it was one of the stations that I was doing hexagonal thinking. We can link it in the show notes. But the two of you have probably done affinity diagrams, right? Or affinity grouping around brainstorming.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So He talks about open space, which made me think of unconferencing. But essentially, students pick a topic, they get to become the expert in that topic, and then they pitch their topic to the class, and then people join them if they want to talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about structured choices, all within this dialogue structure. And what some of the things that he points out and brings forward is the need for teachers to teach the skills that students need in order to succeed in dialogue. And this kind of wraps back to that comment I made about how teachers often say we don't have enough time. We don't have time for them to have open discussions.
Yeah.
Or to participate in class discussion. It's the first thing that gets cut because we got to get our notes down or, whatever. And I think that's really important, is that we don't all know how to talk to each other. We don't all know how to participate in a conversation. And especially if it's new learning, like I may not have anything to say, like I may not have anything to talk about. So now I'm not speaking up in the discussion. Therefore, I may or may not be learning. I could be checked out, especially if it's something that's not relevant to me. Like if we were talking about, I don't know, some TV show that I don't watch and don't have access to.
What's your thoughts on South Park, Cari?
I've got some thoughts.
Yeah. So he talks about like teachers need to teach the skills, like how to listen, how to respond. We've all seen like the sentence frames, the little cards that we can give students, how to lead a discussion. I thought that was great, especially at secondary. Like, how do we put the students in charge of the discussion? And we saw in our previous Canvas course, some teachers putting ideas out there around how do you keep kids on task in a discussion where it's not you, but it's the kids that are responsible for keeping themselves on task for that discussion. Yeah. How to encourage others to talk, the criteria for that kind of stuff. So he's got some really good stuff, I think, in that section around discussions, I guess, and how to keep kids engaged in a discussion and learning in the discussion. So, but one thing that I really want to make sure that we talk about is how he wraps up the chapter around control and caring. And so in this section, he really talks about how teachers need to build confidence and lead with confidence. And I think this has come up in another session that we've talked about as well. And that is the fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about some of my early years of teaching, and even sometimes my early days of professional learning, and some days still in professional learning, is like faking it, feeling more confident than I really do in the moment, and like having people kind of come along with me, and then building confidence over time around something. So I wanted for the three of us to kind of discuss this control and caring section. And caring and control, I guess, is the order that he says he uses. And he talks a little bit about this measures of effective teaching project, which I Googled and kind of did some research on. And essentially it was a project that led into teacher evaluations. But what came out of it is really just that the teachers who show a lot of caring but still maintain control often have the best outcomes for student achievement in their classroom. And so the question I had for us to discuss was really just, can you think of a time or can you describe a classroom where you've seen a teacher demonstrate caring and control, and what did student engagement look like in that classroom?
I will think of an actual answer to your question, but can I share a non-example first that's not even in a classroom?
Yes.
Sweet. Do you guys ever watch Hard Knocks? You know what that is?
Mm-mm.
HBO documentary, runs for about 4 or 5 weeks, and they follow an NFL team during training camp before in preseason. So it's qualifications, and typically you end up picking it's probably kind of a bad team normally, but whatever. Several years ago, they picked the Cleveland Browns, who are just generationally bad, And
Ooh.
the oh man, it might have been like when Baker Mayfield was their quarterback. Doesn't matter. I forget who their coach was at the time. We could look it up. There's this, it's this scene sticks with me a lot because they were a dysfunctional organization, but definitely were at the time. Dysfunctional organization. And I think the reason it stuck with me is because they're still an NFL team. This is still the best of the best of the best, you know? And there's this scene where the coaches are all having a meeting, and it's like the head coach at the head of the table, and then he's got all of his offensive, defensive coordinators, all the other assistant coaches on the side of this like large rectangular table. And it's like after a preseason game they lost and things didn't go well or something. And he asks for like feedback, essentially. The head coach like asks for like feedback or ideas and puts it out there. And one of the assistant coaches gives him some feedback and says, we need to be doing like A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z, and such isn't working, and is honest, answers his question. And then he does the worst possible thing, which is he says, the head coach goes, okay, but at the end of the day, I'm the head coach and I'll make the decisions. And like ended the meeting. And I was like, oh my God, who in their right mind thinks that is an effective strategy? And so like, as you're reading this, I don't know why that I know why that came to mind. It's an example of control with zero caring, right? And here's this guy like, and I think he ended up getting fired either mid-season or after the season, but he like was gripping so tightly onto control because he's kind of incompetent, and then eventually lost that. And like they just had this disastrous season. And if you're paying attention at all to football, I'm pretty sure that part of the reason they chose that team was because Baker Mayfield was this highly touted recruit, this unbelievable draft pick. And they kind of ruined him for a little bit. And he's now lighting it up with Tampa Bay. Like, I'm not sure when people listen to this, but it's November 17th, 2025. And he's having an unbelievable season. And because this guy was incapable, I think there was probably some other issues with that organization, but was incapable of pulling on the strengths of his team and just felt the need for control and to put his foot down and say, even though I just asked for feedback, I'm the end all be all. Ugh. And it actually goes, I think that dovetails very nicely with what we just talked about in the previous chapter around I almost said freedom within form, that power with, not power over. That was very much a power over situation as well.
Yeah.
I'll think of a classroom example, but sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this chapter, as we were talking about the previous chapter, the power with, not power over, all I could think about was like, oh, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about caring and control.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we build caring, but yet still maintain control over our classroom so that we can do cool things in the classroom that support student learning without them feeling oppressed, but without them feeling overwhelmed by like, holy cow, the chaos of this room. So, and do you have an example for us or a classroom to describe and what you think about when you see good caring and control practices?
Well, gosh, I think every classroom, I think the teachers that have set up that caring environment that I've been in our region, that feels like there's caring of for the kids all the, like, that's always out there. I mean, I can't, maybe I choose to forget the ones where I walk in and it's like, oh my gosh, this is not a caring environment, and I leave because I don't feel comfortable. But I think generally all of my classrooms have that caring piece. But I think what you described there is that control sometimes pushes in, not a bad way to push out the caring, but the control around what the importance of happening or what needs to happen, or the systems level pressures that need to happen. Like that control might get in the way of kids understanding that, oh, my teacher still feels caring thoughts towards me or wants me to be successful, even though I got a 0 out of 10 on my homework because it's not turned in on Thursday morning from Mr. Troutman's house or whatever, those kinds of things. But when I was listening to, and I'm trying to make a connection here, and I think I might have, but this idea of, you described a lot of like competencies around like the application, you mentioned like public speaking or talking or getting the kids an opportunity to make those connections. And maybe we look at that connections towards, where as a teacher, the control part comes in when we think about, I got to get through the standards, or I got to get through the learning targets. Maybe, perhaps, I don't know. Like, that's kind of like where my brain is right now. So I'm still caring, but if I focus on that idea of like caring about how to make the connections with kids that are practicing or becoming, in a safe environment to take the risks around some of those pieces, assumptions I'm making as a teacher that they all should have may not feel like it's, I should expect them to be here already, but maybe pausing as a teacher going, that's more of a control approach. Or if I look at it as a caring approach, it's like, my kids are here where they're at. My students are here where they're at. And now I'm going to try to give them some ideas that help them transfer their learning where they're at to these new ideas. And hopefully we'll get them to a point where they're at a way to make it make sense when they go home, where it's real world. So that, I don't know if that's not really like a classroom. I mean, I've seen you teach before, Cari. And again, I've been out of the classroom for a while. And when I was back in the classroom, it was all about, this is how long, I think the last couple classes that I taught, we still had the, oh gosh. Remember when we had to do an end of course assessment? Like, that was the end of course. So before Common Core SBAC or whatever. So that was like, we were clear targets. We had all those standards. We all knew what the content level were, and so we got them there. So I can only speak to classrooms that I've seen, or teachers that I've seen, or kids. I haven't had a full year of teaching in a long time, but like, I've seen, the setting up the expectations for kids, having them fail and make mistakes, reminding them that it's okay if we change our thinking, even if though I wanted to do it at once, having those, that's a caring approach. But the control that I have in my classroom for letting them feel that way, I think that's also an important piece there. Like, yeah, we want to be able to move forward and learn something, but I also want to have a safe environment where we're, like, we've talked about the, safety piece, but like, no, safe to fail, safe to make a mistake, safe to do something, because isn't that what we're doing right now? You and all three of us, we're talking about something, and we might fail at something. That's life.
Yeah. And that's when we say, hey, please cut that.
Yeah. And so I think that's that idea. So I think about that, application of those knowledge and those skills, like maybe shifting our mindset of like, yeah, getting them that's what you should be controlling. Like, helping them, giving those opportunities for kiddos. And
I mean, to that end, I'm thinking about a teacher I used to teach with, was this 8th grade social studies teacher, super creative and also really structured. Like, very expectations for kids were very clear. It's what made her classroom so effective. Like, she had this really great blend of I know what you're supposed to be doing, you know what you're supposed to be doing. And she was also the type to, I'm thinking of specifically this activity she was having kids do where they were podcasting about different periods in history. Actually, no, I say podcasting. No, a few of them were recording a video series, and she was working in, oh man, I forgot about this. This was so fun because she invited me out to come watch her kids go. And what was beautiful about that is she just invited me out because she was excited about what kids were doing. She wasn't looking for my help. She wasn't looking for feedback. She's like, hey, you just want to come see something cool? And like, importantly, she also wasn't like looking for an extra set of hands to make what could have been a very chaotic environment or event like manageable. She had very good control over what her kids were doing, but they were literally spread out in the steps they were on in the process, where they were in their project, their activity, and physically. She had this portable across the way from her that was empty. And so she had kids like this hustling, bustling classroom environment where things are just kind of popping off and kids are loud and some kids are like tucked in a corner and they're working just very, and I want to point out also not a like strictly project-based classroom. Like that's important because this was a high impact activity in her class where they were targeted around like these like standards and this like kind of almost culminating event. And so she had them really digging into some things for about a week or so. So she had some kids over, in the period that I was in, tucked in a corner, kind of working and working on some stuff. Some kids working alone, some kids planning. She's working with small groups and giving feedback and walking around. And then she has some kids in the portable across the way who are recording. Either they're recording audio or they're having they're like standing up and they're recording like the video and doing these different things. They've brought in things to like help them. And so it was like the expectations were very clear. She knew where her opportunities for assessment were, but kids had freedom in how they were accessing the materials, how they were engaging with those, and how they were displaying their learning. But again, at the end of all of that, like her structure and her materials and her expectations were all in play. That way she could hold kids accountable. And like the other question you asked us was, what did engagement look like in this classroom? So varied, right? Not like in terms of were kids engaged, it's just how engagement was on display looked so different. The other thing that I haven't talked to this teacher in a couple of years, so I was about to use her name, but I'm not. The other thing that
We're not supposed to use names. Remember, we got in trouble for that one.
The other thing that I remember her doing is she could get this class's attention back like no problem.
Yeah.
Because she had the respect of her classroom. And this was also December. It was like either December or January. I remember it being kind of cold. And so like she wasn't starting off with this in September, right? She had established her expectations and her priorities and her systems and her environment and was continuing to build that. But she was using all of that solid foundation to get kids to do different things that engage them and grab their attention. But at any moment, it seemed like she could just pull them back and she just had them. And like, you don't get that if you just let kids go. You just let kids do whatever you want. She had done so much work ahead of time. And then her work during the procedure was assessment, feedback, joy. Like she's like laughing and goofing and like getting kids excited and listening to them. Andy and I were in a district last week, and one of the teachers was talking about making more time to listen to students. And like that's a perfect example of that. Like, how do you build that in? You don't just say, hey, let me listen to you. Is you give them the opportunity and space and time to talk, and then you make yourself available to walk around and listen to them. So like all of those things kind of culminated, but it doesn't go anywhere without her like solid foundation of structure.
Yeah.
I'm thinking sounds like exactly what this chapter is all about. Right
she's a rock star.
Yeah. Rock star.
Yeah.
And you cannot do this without the structures in place. And the structures actually communicate caring to the students as well, not just control. Like when you put those structures in place, I feel like it communicates to them that you care about them and you care about their learning. So you're going to hold them accountable to some of these things that we need to see in our classroom so that we can all be successful.
Yeah. One of our asks is come out and like work with new teachers, right? Or brand new to the profession, or brand new second career, was in the system before, but now wants to have their classroom, and just to get that sense of what does teaching feel like or look like from someone else, because they never really had that before. So in a district as well, get the, hey, could you come do a lesson? We could talk about that. Could be one of our nuggets too, just the asks of modeling and things. But the important part here is like, yeah, let's do something, but then showing that lesson in that 45 minutes or that hour long time, whatever it was, and then asking, usually get, that was so great. Thank you. That was so helpful, and then having that lens, okay, what was great about it? What made it great? What were you noticing? And one of the things that we were just talking about with this new teacher at this district was like, well, how many transitions did we do? Right? We moved, how many movements do we get from our desks to the carpet time, to the back to the desks, And those are all routine that are thought out. Like you say, that control was embedded within the routines that the kids were doing. So yeah, we weren't sitting in our desk for 45 minutes. We were up and we went over here and we did a number. We started off with a number talk that was connected back down to the games that we were playing, which then we consolidated our thinking or what we just did back up at the board where we did the number talk. And then we went back down to grab all the things that we want to make sure we don't forget for tomorrow. Like there was structure in that was helpful for the kids, and it wasn't just like we played games for a half an hour and then I told them that they need to have these notes down. Like there's thoughtful things in that one. And I think that was that part where kids were, the why it was so great or the thank yous were there. It was like the kids were engaged and they weren't distractions or they weren't the discipline pieces that I think the teachers that haven't been in education for a long time that just don't know, like, how do I control these kids? Get them moving around. If they're busybodies, build in those transitions. And if you have an hour, you should maybe have 4 transitions and see how that goes. Like just those little tweaks to say, like, that's that control. I think that you're taught, that we have over the kids. That's caring. To say like, oh, I can open my voice here. That's a open-ended conversation that there's no wrong answer. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to work with a partner. I'm going to practice some things and play with some ideas and get some understanding. And then I'm going to listen to Mr. Boyd for about 15 minutes to really consider like that, what's happening. And then we'll try some things out like that. So that this idea, like what does the lesson look like? Just that, thinking about giving those opportunities for those teachers to see that and think about it, like that's structure. I know it feels chaotic or loose or open-ended, but how important that is to say, no, I'm going to trust you all to come sit in the carpet with me and we're going to do something. And then we're going to transition back but this is all in my math long hour period or whatever. You could do that to high school as well. Like sitting in desk for 50 minutes, that is horribly boring. I would imagine. I would think it is. But
in high school, that's for sure.
Right.
Well, and we all know, like, having been a teacher, right? We know kids talk about the mean teachers and the nice teachers. And the mean teachers are the ones that are often highly structured, very in control of their classrooms. Students don't have a whole lot of freedom. And the kids say they're mean and they're resentful and they don't want to go to that class period or they, and then there's the nice teachers that they walk all over. And those teachers often are the ones that have less control over the classroom, less structures in place, less demands on students. Those are the nice teachers. And you just think about the balance of the two.
Yeah. And then the engagement, like you say, could look different for depending on where they're at in their learning or where they're at in that activity and, and then trying to pick up formatively where they're thinking, and then you can move on. And just like that's like dropping into a system and then trying to like model something is probably the hardest thing of one of our, at least for my job, right? Not knowing where the kids have been and where do you want me to launch them towards, without it feeling like a weird one-off, but I always get a kick of like, oh, cool, you're here today. We don't have to do math. I'm like, yep. Gotcha.
And then when they realize it's not you, they call you a cop.
Yeah, that's even better.
With that, yeah.
That's even better. But
yeah. Yeah, no.
There's a reference with zero context that no one's gonna understand.
No.
or they that you and I look alike. That's the other thing too. Like, you were here last week, right? Like, no, that was not me.
Don't insult Mr. Boyd like that. Just
So, anyways, that was so that balance is of structure and control. Yeah, where's that middle point, the middle ground? And is that something you just learn as you have more experience? Because I would imagine, like, I mean, I've heard this before. I don't know really how to respond, but a veteran teacher leaning into a new teacher saying, you got to have a book. You got to go through it. You got to be structured. You need the discipline, the classroom, boom, boom, boom. Don't give them too much space. Put them in rows, spread them out. It's like, dude, you're just describing a horrible learning environment. But like what are you like? you want these new teachers who are passionate about coming in with kids that they, like, do you like the students? Do you want to be here? They're always yes, but now you don't put them in a situation where they're going to not like you or they're not, so I don't know.
Yeah,
My
I
first
think
year,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
I was going to say, my first year of teacher or teaching, I remember a teacher telling me, you can't smile until December. Like that was the advice that I was given. You need to be hard and like strict and make sure that like get all of your stuff in place and don't be smiling at those kids until December, which is not my personality.
Yeah.
But I just remember thinking, what do I like? I'm here to have fun. Like I
Yeah.
want, but I had to rein that in. That was a learning experience for me. I think I shared in a previous podcast
Season.
around how but yes, it might, no, it was the season. It was when we had Ashley with us
Oh,
about
yes.
how by November, I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like I was getting walked all over. I was being too nice. I wasn't holding kids accountable to the things that I was saying that I wanted from them, which was like a callback and like be able to call them back in an instant with something and get control over the classroom. So anyway,
Yeah,
don't.
well, I think if you take that advice in the spirit that it's meant, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if I've, other than, what am I trying to say? I heard the same thing in my student teaching. Don't smile. I heard don't smile till after Thanksgiving. And I was like, what? That's just, but ever since then, I've always kind of taken that in the spirit of it's easier to relinquish structure than it is to implement structure after the fact. And so if you start the year and like you let the kids walk all over you or you're just having a good time, kids see that. I'm thinking middle school, but like in any, our 3-year-old sees that. The second there's like a lack of structure or like mom and dad aren't on the same page, it's like there's an opportunity for exploitation, and I'm going to exploit the weakness and make you pay. And while that's not every single kid, that was my experience with a lot of seventh graders was they are looking for any excuse to be able to be off task because that is their job, right? Like
Mhm.
the job of a kid is to find the loopholes and to find the weaknesses and the path of least resistance. And that's part of what makes teaching so fun is it's a constant challenge and it can be frustrating. But like, if you don't love that challenge, then that is a tougher job than I think than it needs to be. But
Yeah.
I get to play devil's advocate. I get where people are coming from with the don't smile till November or December, or whatever it is, simply because of that easier to relax on your structure a little bit. Because back to my point with my from the teacher I saw,
Mhm.
she had done all of that work, and kids really liked her, but not because she was super fun. She had a super fun personality,
Yeah.
but I think to your point, Carrie, it's because she had the structure, and that is a way of showing caring to students. I remember before I was a teacher, I think I was probably high school. My mom was teaching, and she said, "Kids need structure. Kids crave structure." And I said something like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life." Because as a high school student, all I've ever known is captivity, right? Like I'm in K-12 and I don't get to make the rules and like I'm always like kind of trying to figure out all these different teachers' rules. And then when I became a teacher, I understood what she meant by that. Like without that structure, kids lose respect for you. And I'd always think I've definitely told the story about my 7th grade social studies teacher who there was like no structure there. And when things got real out of hand, he turned real nasty, not like mean and manipulative, but like when I lose my temper at my kids, it's largely because there's been a lack of structure and we've spiraled into something that's inappropriate. And so then I've got
Yeah.
to pull it back and my emotions get the best of me. And I think if you have that form and you're allowing freedom within it, you're less likely to get to those places because you can always fall back on your norms for one and
Yeah.
your expectations for others, and uh so I don't know. I think I would never give the advice to a new teacher, don't smile till November, December, January, whatever. um but my worry is, and I've asked this question before, my worry is what happens when, no, I'll turn this one on me. Had I tried to be the teacher I ended up being or continue to try to be in my first year, I would have done I would have had a harder year. I was going to say I would have done some damage. I don't think so. But like I've definitely said before, I did not like who I was my first year teaching because I was very iron fist. I was trying to be, I took that advice, right? Like more structure, have control. I was holding on too tight. And then I released control a little bit, leaned into my personality, and things were a lot better. I did not have the context or competence to do that in my first year of teaching because I didn't know what I was doing because I'd never had my own classroom before outside of student
Mhm.
teaching. And so I do think there's an element of you got to learn the ropes a little bit before you like let kids loose, because I do think first and foremost it is a teacher's responsibility to keep kids safe, and you
Mhm.
are not safe in an unstructured classroom.
Right.
Mhm. Well, and I wonder if that structure starts with not handing out the syllabus day one, but no, we're going to set our expectations and norms together. Right. And then so now these are the, it doesn't matter what we're going to learn about until we as a community in this period of time, whatever, or this full day, whatever level you're at, like, no, this is how we interact with each other. These are our expectations. These are my expectations of you. And what are your expectations of me? Like, what should I do if you are struggling? Like, what are those things, instead of like, what should we do if you don't turn in that homework? And it's all because then we just fall back on that one. Like that was the best thing I learned as a new teacher is like we decided our contract, our learning contract, our school-wide community, whatever it was. And then when we broke contract, we went and just fell on that and said, why is your grade a C, or why is your level here, or whatever? Well, because I don't have any evidence to show that you've learned anything because you haven't turned anything in, or except whatever that may be, right? And so like that's that structure that's a little bit that can help you as an experienced teacher, but as a new teacher, I would imagine. But if you are having to make something up in the middle of a conflict, then your expectation wasn't clear at the beginning, because the kids are going to just say, you never said that. And they're probably right, to be honest, right? They are probably right. Like, why am I getting a detention? Well, you were late to class. You never said I couldn't be late to class, right? The bells are, I mean, they're that smart. They're sneaky. So what are our expectations? Well, you come to class before the bell rings, you're ready to go, you have your pencil, all those things. Now, if I write a detention for pencils, then we have a different conversation. That's a nugget thing we could talk about. But like
That
those
goes
kinds
back
of,
to power over,
that's power over, not
because
power
those are the
with.
things that set up, yeah, the power struggles.
That's
And that
right.
goes back to caring and control too. What is control? What does control look like where you're not setting yourself up for power struggles?
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Stefan, something you said was like almost a direct quote from the chapter, which is actually a quote from Tommy Lasorda. Does everybody know Tommy Lasorda?
Yeah,
Right?
Dodgers
Yeah.
coach. Go
Yeah.
Rockies.
So the chapter starts with this quote. It said, and he calls it the Lasorda law. That's what Knight calls it. But he says, I believe managing is like holding a dove in your hands. If you hold it too tightly, you kill it. But if you hold it too loosely, you lose it. And that was related to what you were just
ooh,
saying,
that's
Phil.
good.
Yeah, isn't
That's
it
real
good?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
My
so,
favorite image of Tommy Lasorda was where there's a foul ball that went toward, he was a third base coach at the time, and it knocked him off his head and he rolled over. I mean, he laughed afterwards. He was okay, but that's all.
He was concussed.
yeah.
It was just funny. Sorry.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think like in the chapter, obviously he says like, this relates to the classroom. He's talking about managing a baseball team, but
Mhm. Same idea,
it's
right?
the same idea, managing people.
Well,
What is,
that's a good way to think about it. They always say the difference between like college and professional sports is like you are managing egos and personalities at the professional level versus like developing talent at the collegiate or high school level. And so
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And the difference there with teachers, like you are developing talent, but you are also absolutely managing egos and personalities
That's
of
right.
parents as well, right? In your
yeah.
community.
It might have been Don Zimmer I'm thinking about. I got to go back and look at that one. Don't fact check me on that, but
Well, we're definitely going to Google it.
I like that idea. Like, so like as a teacher, we're setting up that environment that we're not like, we're also part of it. Like how often like, what percent of teachers, when they walk into that classroom, do they think like, this is our environment, not necessarily my classroom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just in general, like what principal walks in and says, this is our school versus my school?
Yeah.
Same idea. I don't
Big
know.
deal. That is a big
Right?
deal, that mentality of, do you view your classroom as our classroom, or do you view your classroom as my classroom? Because
My classroom.
yeah,
Well,
that
and
is
there
a
is a
big difference.
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, there's a line there too, because I guess I would argue, maybe this isn't me taking what you just said in good faith, but I would argue that like there is an element of it is my classroom. Like I am responsible for the learning of all, because like I don't care how involved you feel like in our learning. If you are disadvantaging the learning of another, who's
Yeah.
responsible for that? I
True.
mean, you're responsible for your own actions, but I am responsible for taking care of that. And so I maybe we cut this because it's probably an inappropriate analogy, but like I guess I never viewed my classroom as a democracy or a dictatorship. It's more of a cult following. Like the idea that, and I stole that actually, honestly, from a fellow teacher of mine. She was a teacher friend of mine. It was when I was a coach. She came to me for some advice, and she was like asking something. We're just in this in this coaching conversation, and I'll never forget it. It's one of my favorite things I've ever heard a teacher say. She's asking about doing something, like big and bold and really challenging kids. And just to get her to think a little bit deeper, I said, so why are kids going to do that? Tell me about, what's going to motivate kids to engage in that activity. And she stops and she looks at me, and dead serious, she looks me in the eyes. She goes, because I am a charismatic leader and they are my cult followers. And I was like,
I
I had
used
to
to just
stop. It's so funny. But then, like, as I thought about it and reflected, it's like, that's kind of the mentality I hope to take with my classroom, is like, I want you to follow me, but I don't necessarily always need to be leading you, right? This should be a community grassroots effort. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, there is a leader in this classroom, and it's finding the time when I should be leading. But, there's plenty of times where I followed as well in my classroom. To teach me something, talk to me about what you're doing, that type of stuff. Her
that
name I
just
will use. That was
reminded
Trisha Albright. She's amazing. Yeah.
that reminded me, Stefan, of what I used to tell my middle schoolers, and that was, I would tell them, I was like, I'm a benevolent dictator. Like we're gonna do it my way, but I will hear your complaints and smile about them.
But ultimately, when it comes down to the Browns organization, I'm the ones making the decision.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I would tell them. But I like the cult leader much
That's a good
better.
one,
But
right?
I said benevolent dictator.
How about they trust us?
There we go.
Let's land on trust, maybe, and
Develop
saying
a
like
community of trust,
blind
And
dedication.
respect.
and maybe within this 50 minutes in the classroom together, or the whole day, whatever, that I feel safe. And then this person I will follow,
Yeah.
but it's more of a trusting that, okay, I can do this. Every day is different. That's why I love teaching. It wasn't a factory job. It wasn't a behind the desk, filing my TPS reports all the time, right? You get that one? Yeah, Stefan got it? Yeah?
Oh, I love Office Space.
Oh, okay. Phew. I was hoping that was.
Come on.
Oh, Carrie?
Sorry.
Dang it.
Oh, no.
I know. There's another nugget. Anyways,
People
but
often ask me, what do you watch? And I go, I don't know, but it's none of the things everybody else watches.
But like that's the idea. Like the reason why I got into teaching, because you walk in the door and it is different, because it's different every day. That was fun about it. But TPS reports. Okay, Office Space.
I have seen Office Space. I just don't memorize all these things. I have seen it. There are parts of it that I will
TPS reports
reference.
are iconic.
All right. Right.
What is it you say that you do around here?
So I'm going to need you to come in this weekend.
Yeah. See,
Anyways,
I know some of the references. I just don't remember the TPS report.
does he mention some other strategies that they like? What are some ways to set that culture up? He talked about routines. I get that. Like, what are some other things that you've seen that really shows that trust, firm with the, what's that saying? Hard, firm, but soft, kind of an
Warm
idea,
demander.
Yeah. No, I mean, not really. He does talk about surveying the students. Andy, you just
Mhm.
mentioned asking the kids and surveying the kids about what they want expect from a classroom, but he does offer up like give them the MET survey, which I
Yeah.
looked into, and there is a survey in the chapter, I think, around engagement, like looking at student engagement, but not necessarily a survey that you would give students.
Yeah.
Um, he talked about the classroom norms, setting up norms, the rituals, procedures, and then making sure that you're teaching and the skills that you want students to have in order to adhere to those things.
Yeah.
And then making sure that you're very clear about the criteria around choice. Like, so giving
Mm.
lots of choice, but making sure that it's very clear what criteria you have for success in those choices that students are making. But no, not
Yeah.
necessarily. But I think some of it refers back to some of the things that we've talked about in previous chapters too.
Yeah. We need to provide opportunities for people in teaching to professionally learn or grow, right? That's one of our tasks as our employment. We've tried some things in person, outside, so we're trying we're trying something new here. So like what you know we're able to think outside creatively and give that opportunity, but we're also like not like, okay, you need X, Y, Z. No real world works that way, really. There might be some things if we're in a fact, like, I don't know, but like, what I'm talking about? Like, if we're able to be creatively thinking, like, here's your homework, your late work, our assignment is to just get professional learning opportunities out for teachers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how does that connect back into a K-12 classroom system? I don't know. That's just what I'm wondering about, right? Like, what do we give opportunities for kids to think about it, to be excited about it, to manage it without us going in, well, we got to get through the standards because that's what we're going to be tested upon. And that's what we need to know next year because, instead of like saying, oh, let's talk about a project or an idea or something and then make those connections for kids and get the guardrails up for them to be successful. But maybe it's making an app that's a game or a board, whatever. I don't know, but there's tons of ideas out there. But if we're just saying do this by this due date, do we have that in our world? Have you ever gotten a due date except those vector trainings and some of those, turn in your contract, like those kinds of things? But in terms of like our real world learning or our real world, what we were prepared for in K-12, right?
Yeah, again, that goes to job. I worked in an oil refinery. My first job out of college was an oil refinery. Did I
Mm-hmm.
have due dates? Oh, yes, we did.
Yep.
There was all kinds of stuff that we had to do. You had to do in a certain time period. 10 minutes sometimes. You had 10 minutes to complete a specific test because the tanker was about to send the gas down the pipeline and they needed to know, whatever, what octane it was, what impurities they had, all those things. So
But
I
did
think it
you
just
stop
depends on your job.
and go, oh, thank God my teachers gave me due dates on my homework. That way
That's
I
what I
could
mean.
complete this time bound test, right?
No.
Like I think those things are important habits to instill
That's
for
my point.
sure. But like, it does come down to what is the purpose of schooling? And it's
Mhm.
not just to be better at school. But that was from that Data Minds book,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Schooling. Yeah.
It's it's not to perpetuate academia, which is those structures make us feel very comfortable. And wading into the unknown
Mm-hmm.
is scary. And so
Yeah.
then we rely on these things, these systems that we've relied on for a long time. And that's not to say that like grammar or punctuation is not important. It is, but it should not be a defining success factor because we don't live in the industrial age anymore. Like
No.
we live in a knowledge economy where creativity and real human skills are the priority.
Yeah.
And those things need to be developed and opportunities to be flexed and practiced, which like you don't do if you don't have some kind of freedom within a specific structure. Because again, like if you're thinking about like Cari's like working on an oil refinery, you have to have those structures. It's some very tight structure there, but you're still the master of what you do. And there's probably still a little bit of like relying on you as an individual to bring the skills that you need. Thanks for learning with us today. If something we said sparked a thought, made you nod, or something Andy said made you roll your eyes, we'd love to hear about it. Share the episode, tag a colleague, send it to your PLC, or just keep the conversation going within your own team. You can connect with us via the feedback form in the show notes, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, and suggestions for topics to cover in future episodes. We're all growing together, and that starts with paying attention to our own practice.